GSA's new strategy is great news, unless you're a middleman. On May 28th, GSA sent a letter to 10 of the largest value-added resellers, companies like Carosoft. These companies were asked to provide detailed data about their contracts, how much they charge, how much they mark up original equipment manufacturer products, and what extra fees they apply. The middleman isn't necessary. This might be my favorite part of the Federal News Network article. According to the Federal News Network, the letter doesn't say this, but the tone is more like the middleman isn't necessary. GSA didn't stop there. In the same letter, the Federal Acquisition Service Commissioner Josh Grunbaum stated, "We intend to explore using this input as a scorecard to potentially establish a markup cap or other spend controls on OEM or vendor costs moving forward." Hey, my name's Rick Howard. I'm a former government acquisitions officer. I managed over $82 billion in government contracts. And now I run GovClose, the #1 training program for you would-be government contractors out there, you actual government contractors out there, sales executives, consultants, etc. So what are we talking about here today? Well, let's go back in time. April 29th, the GSA unveils the OneGov strategy to transform how the government buys goods and services. Now, if we cycle down here, the strategy calls for deeper direct engagement with OEMs, that's the original equipment manufacturer, to ensure more transparent pricing. While agencies have historically purchased software through resellers, that's another word for middleman, this new approach prioritizes direct relationships to deliver better outcomes. It's a big win for government and industry, and it goes on to talk a lot about what they want to do. Working directly with the OEMs is another way of saying get rid of the middleman, get rid of resellers. Although I do want to point out there's a difference between a reseller, or otherwise referred to as a VAR. You may see the acronym value-added reseller. Now, there's two types of middleman. There's the reseller, or the VAR, value-added reseller. These are companies with real contracts, past performance. They offer real value. They do often streamline the process for OEMs, and they can take the contracting burden paperwork-wise a bit off of their hands. Although there's also a negative. They're usually taking points on the contract, so they're taking some of the profit away. Now, it is often good for the OEMs if they're trying to utilize contract vehicles that they don't have. Now, then there's the pretender. This is where we see a lot of middleman talk on social media. Someone with no experience, typically no relationships, no team. They're just hunting for solicitations and trying to match with a subcontractor. It's the matchmaker model. Sounds cute on social media, but it has no place in federal contracting. If you're a real reseller, there's still a future. It's changing fast, so be prepared. Now, Federal News Network put out a story where they talked about, so we're going forward in time here to June 10th. At the same time, GSA is digging into the value-added reseller model to better understand the role of such companies and what it would take for original equipment manufacturers to sell directly to the government. Again, so we're talking about getting rid of the man in the middle to sell directly to the government. Now, this quote from the article I thought was particularly interesting. "We hope companies take it in the spirit of what we are trying to do, save money while transforming the procurement system." We could see here where the GSA official who requested anonymity because they didn't have permission to speak to the press says, "What you are seeing with the OneGov announcement is that we want companies to make direct deals where possible. These companies need to understand our goal to engage more directly with OEMs and work through GS." Now, you can read more about this on my recent newsletter on LinkedIn, The Death of the Middleman. This is with the GovCon newsletter, and I'll leave a link in the YouTube video so you can subscribe to the newsletter. Now, it's not lost on me the irony that GSA is taking actions to get rid of the middleman when in many ways GSA is the biggest middleman of them all. As an Air Force acquisitions officer, I actively did not use GSA. I thought it was ridiculous that I would have another federal agency get in the middle of me, the Air Force, working with the company that I had put on contract to solve an Air Force problem. That would just create bureaucracy and way too long of a timeline. But regardless, GSA is being pushed by President Trump's executive order to centralize procurement for federal agencies. Now they are pushing a more direct relationship with OEMs directly with federal agencies that are making the purchase and eliminating the middleman or the resellers from the equation. Now, let's just talk about some things GSA is not doing. What GSA isn't doing? GSA is not taking over procurement for everything. I've spoken with former GSA officials and federal insiders. They agree mission-critical contracts will probably not see an increase in GSA use. What they are doing is centralizing the basics, things like software licenses, tech shared tools across agencies. That's why they created the Office of Centralized Acquisition Service inside the Federal Acquisition Service, which also they did because of the executive order from the president. Now, they're even asking contracting officers if they want to move over to GSA's Office of Centralized Acquisition Service, which is ironic. What does this mean for you? Look, GSA wants direct relationships with OEMs. Resellers need to rethink their role. Consultants who understand the system are becoming more valuable than ever. If you've trained with us at GovClose, you're already ahead. You've learned how to build direct relationships with OEMs, how to shape deals before they hit stand, and how to manage category-driven acquisition. If you want to learn more, you can go to govclose.com and you can follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe to our GovCon newsletter, which is what I just read to you. Peace out. I had an interview with Kevin Kivlin of GSA, which you may remember a month and a half or so ago, where he was very specific. What GSA is going to take over certain things, certain buying actions, but when we talked about mission essentials, those are still going to be done within the Department of Defense, and those program managers are still going to be living in those acquisition shops. GSA is not taking over procurement for everything. I've spoken with former GSA officials and federal insiders. They agree mission-critical contracts will probably not see an increase in GSA use. What they are doing is centralizing the basics. That's why they created the Office of Centralized Acquisition Service, which also they did because of the executive order from the president. Now, they're even asking contracting officers if they want to move over to GSA's Office of Centralized Acquisition Service, which is ironic. Personally, I think what's going to happen is if we see a history of GSA purchasing things like products, pharmaceuticals, things like that, we're probably going to see an increase or an increased use of GSA for those things. There's no way that, in my opinion, GSA could actually take over acquisitions and procurement for the entire federal government, especially after getting rid of a bunch of GSA employees. That's probably one of the reasons GSA is trying to recruit contracting officers to come into that organization to help them with the increased workload. But regardless, what I would tell you to do as the company, as the consultant, as the sales executive, just stay abreast of what is going on in GSA and what they're actually trying to do. If I was an OEM, I would be looking to create direct relationships with federal agencies and have an alternative plan to using a reseller. So for instance, if you're using a reseller to take advantage of the fact that they have a GSA schedule or access to NASA soup and you don't have that, especially if the agency you're selling to wants to use a contract vehicle, you may want to start looking at getting that contract vehicle yourself. If you're a company that doesn't have a GSA schedule, we know that GSA is increasing the use of schedules in certain areas. So I would probably start that application process, but do your homework first. Understand if GSA is involved at all with how the government buys the product or service that you sell. Now, this is just a quick one from us, just to go over what's going on with GSA. If you have questions, head on over to govclose.com, where we train companies, consultants, sales executives on the true art form of selling to the government, what it takes, how to generate income streams from that. We'll see you in the next video, and I'm going to link to the GSA interview I did with Kevin, and you can watch that right here.